Hello, everyone. Welcome to the book launch for Eagles War. Okay, so I figured that I would just crack on straight away with a reading from the book just to get us into the mood. And then my friend Jeff is going to come and we're going to have a little chat about the book. Then there'll be a chance for any of you to ask any questions that you like. And yeah, if you're online, you can put your questions in the chat. We'll be able to answer those as well. So I'm going to start off with a reading from quite near the start of Eagles Lore. And this reading, well, basically the main character, Aiden, and his eagle Iolair are visiting the
They can see you, so to
the big group of eagles in their ears, and they have what they call a wing telling, which is basically like an eagle storytelling session. So I thought I would start off with a reading from that to get us into the storytelling mood. And obviously this is book 3 of the series, so I won't be able to be completely spoiler free if you've not read books 1 and 2, but I don't think it will matter. Okay. So this is the first ever live reading from Eagles War. Iolair coasted along the face of the cliffs, gliding through the night sky on a warm air current. Ahead, Torka and Keeligard tilted upwards in the final ascent to where the eagles were gathering for the wing telling. Aiden's stomach squirmed as they rose, unsure what to expect. Iolair's muscles thrummed beneath him, betraying her own anticipation. Iolair crested the cliff, giving Aiden a sudden open vista across the mountain top. It was a fractured landscape of craggy pillars and weathered stone. Pale moonlight reflected off the rocks, sending deep shadows down into the fissures. The eagles' gathering place soon became visible, a natural amphitheatre ringed with pillars. The eagles perched on the many ledges, creating a tiered effect around a central slab of rock. One pillar stood isolated from the rest. Upon its heights stood Scalder, leader of the great eagles. Keeligrar flew down to the flat slab at the centre, and Iolair followed. Once on the ground, Aiden noticed all the eagles staring at them. Erin was perched amidst the congregation, but she gave no sign of recognition. Torka dismounted and motioned for Aiden to do the same. Let the eagles start the talking, Torka whispered. It's not often they have humans in a wing telling, not even riders. Aiden nodded and patted Iolair's shoulder. Iolair keyed something in the language of the eagles. Keeligrar added his own voice. Then Scalder keyed back. The 3 eagles exchanged a few more words, none of which Aiden understood. He watched Scalder, careful not to make eye contact. The great eagle perched so majestically, his feathers gleaming in the moonlight. Without warning, Scalder switched into words that Aiden could understand, though they were not addressed to him personally. Welcome, kith and kin, said Scalder, spreading his wings wide against the sky. I know many of you are curious about why we have called a wing telling out of season. Tonight, we welcome the riders Aiden and Torka into our midst. Aiden is the newest rider, bonded to Iolair, a fledgling from these very eyries. A rustle of feathers spread around the circle, punctuated by a few small keys. Aiden wondered whether they were proud or disapproving. Aiden and Iolair are followers of the Silver Eagle, Scalder continued. They work to understand the dark magic of Sorcier and find a power, new or old, that can stand against him. Wisely, they seek our legends, knowing that the stories of the eagles are not fanciful tales like those of humans, knowing that they speak of ancient truths. So I ask you, if you have a story worthy of telling, do so now. Aiden's breath caught as he waited for an eagle to step forward and speak. A musical murmur filled the air as several of the great birds spoke to their companions in the language of eagles. The sound washed over him without comprehension. He nudged Iolair. Is this supposed to happen? She bobbed her head. It is normal for there to be some discussion before the first story is chosen. Several more minutes passed, while Aiden tried to still his impatience. None of the eagles seemed concerned by the delay. Only Torga, standing next to him, fingers drumming nervously on his leg, betrayed any of the same tension Aiden felt. At last, an older eagle spread his wings and flew to a pillar of rock, slightly lower than where Skaldr perched. Apparently this was the storyteller's stone. An ending cannot come before a beginning, he said, his voice rough, as if not used to forming the words of the human language. In the beginning, Turan was a land without magic. It was inhabited by the creatures of the earth, water and sky, but they were unwoken. Aiden frowned at the odd word and wondered if it was a concept that didn't translate well from the eagle language. One day, a glorious eagle, with feathers of gold and silver, came from the north, seeking a land to call home. When he reached Turan and saw her towering peaks, restless forests, and vast plains, he knew he had found his place. The eagle beat his wings in triumph, causing a wind to blow throughout the land. This wind carried his very essence, a wild spirit that awoke the creatures of the earth, water, and sky as it flew over them. When they saw the majestic eagle who had given them his spirit, they bowed before him, king of the sky. The Sky King was pleased by their admiration, and he gave each creature a part of his spirit to use as their own. To the Fae, he gave a mastery over the earth, and of the things made from it. To the river folk, he gave the power of the water. To the tree spirits, he gave great knowledge and wisdom. And to the eagles, he gave the control of the winds. And from that day, Turan has never again been a land without magic. The old eagle finished his tale, gave a brief nod to Skaldr, then returned to his perch. Aiden glanced at Iolair. Is that it? Isn't he going to explain anything? Is this Sky King a real eagle, or is this just some mythical tale? Iolair cocked her head at him. Haven't you heard of the Sky King? Aiden shook his head. Iolair clacked her beak quietly. Your human tales really are lacking. Of course the Sky King is real. How else would we have magic? But how does it work? I don't think that's the relevant part of the story. It is if we're searching for no sort of magic. Iolair bumped him with her wing, as if he were being a silly child. It's a story, Aiden. It's not meant to speak to your head, but to your heart. Okay, so that was just a little taster of Eagle's War. And I'm going to invite up Jeff. We're going to have a bit of a chat about the book and writing and all sorts. And then there'll be time for you to ask your questions at the end as well. So, welcome, Jeff.
Thanks, Lindsay. Exciting.
Yes.
I have the privilege of being one of the proofreaders of Eagle's War, so I've already read it. It's really good. So definitely get a copy and start reading it tonight. You won't be able to put it down. Significantly more, well, not more exciting, but well, it's a war, isn't it? So I would say it's maybe more dramatic all the way through than the other two bits.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
I think maybe I've got better at writing with a bit more tension as well, maybe, I don't know, or keeping the pace going.
Yeah.
But yeah, there probably is. I mean, it's like any book you do. The closer you get to the end, the more dramatic it gets as well.
Yes. Well, I think that.
Yeah.
So for those who maybe don't know or can't quite remember, this first book was in 2017.
Yes, so what was been a while.
Do you want to give us just a recap of the whole Eagle Rider, kind of, not the whole saga, I mean,
Yeah.
the big picture?
I'll not go into too much detail because we'll be here a while. But yeah, so I mean, for those who are maybe new to the Eagle Rider saga, it's a young adult and epic fantasy adventure story set in a magical world that is quite wild, a bit like Scotland, and it's populated by many magical creatures. If you're familiar with Scottish mythology, and some of them might be familiar to you as well. And yeah, so book one follows the story of Aiden, who is a teenager who goes to work for the Eagle Riders, and the Eagle Riders are like kind of elite, magical warrior guardians of the land. But a dark wizard comes back from the dead, and the Eagle Riders go missing, and it's up to Aiden and his friends to go on a big quest across the land to try and save them, I guess. And yeah, so book one is kind of Aiden's joining of the world of the Eagle Riders and trying to save them and introducing like the big bad guy who comes back from the dead. I'd say book two is more like Aiden's journey as he's flown with an eagle. I mean, it's kind of a spoiler, but I mean, it's kind of obvious because it's the Eagle Riders. But yeah, book two is kind of his journey to becoming an Eagle Rider. And then, yeah, I guess that leads us into book three, which Aiden is now really an Eagle Rider, and he has to kind of, I guess, delve more into the history of the Eagle Riders and some of the ancient magic and things like that.
Nice.
So yeah, that's a very brief summary.
And is this the last book?
That's a very good question. It was maybe going to be the last book, but it's not. This is going to be book 3 of 4. So I'm pretty sure book 4 will be the last one. But I can never tie myself down to these sort of things just in case. But yeah, I'm fairly confident that I know where it's ending. And yeah, that's the plan. That this is book 3 of 4.
Nice. Well, maybe that leads on to a question about how the series came about and it is continuing to come about. So it sounds like you don't have an absolute definite plan that like this is how it's going to play out. There's going to be one more bit for sure. What's the where did it start and how is it going? How are you shaping it as you go on?
Well, basically the original concept for the Eagle Rider saga started when I was a teenager and probably reading the Aragon books, which were Dragon Riders, and I was like, I love Dragon Riders, maybe I could do Eagle Riders. And then yeah, so teenage Lindsey wrote a book, and then adult Lindsey thought, oh, maybe I could try and publish this. And so I changed this was sort of one book that I had into, well, at that time, sort of a trilogy. But really, I just took the first part of the story and wrote it into a book. I didn't really have a specific plan of how it was going to end. And then I wrote a second book, and I was kind of just working it out as I went. And then I hit Eagles War and realized I maybe had to plan it a little bit more because you want to get the ending right. So in the process of planning Eagles War, or I should say, in the process of writing Eagles War, realizing it wasn't working, going back to the start and then making a plan. And that was when I kind of figured out that actually the problem was I trying to fit too much into one book. And that was why the third book has become books 3 and 4. But yeah.
Nice.
I do have a plan for the fourth one, I'm glad to know. I'm not just winging it anymore.
Brilliant. And I'll just say here, well, if people can ask questions in a minute, so I'll ask some questions we have already talked about.
Yeah.
But if anyone would like to ask a question, please be preparing one, and people online, if you want to put it into the chat, then I have that here so I can read it out. Do drop any questions in. But I want to ask a bit more about when you actually are doing the creative part of making up the story, making up characters, coming up with a world, and the world building part. You've got a lot of aspects in Terra which are, I mean, you have references in other imaginary worlds, but they're pretty neat, like the runes, for example, and your she, which I've been pronouncing wrong for a long time.
Everyone pronounced it wrong.
But now you have a pronunciation guide on the website.
Yes. If you go to my website and I have a pronunciation guide for all of these weird Gaelic inspired words that no one knows how to pronounce.
Yeah, so that helps with reading when you do. But how does that work? Do these things just pop up in your head? You know, that's great, I'll use that. Or do you sit and sort of have a meticulous process for making them emerge? How do you come up with all the unique ideas?
Yeah, well, I think, interestingly, I think I've discovered about myself is that I'm a very imaginative person, but I don't have a very visual imagination, really. So when I'm my sort of original thinking of the scenes, it's more like a feeling or a sense of what the scene is or what the character is. And then I have to think really hard about what does this actually look like or how does this actually work. And even still, like I don't have a specific picture of any of my characters in my head, weirdly, but I have a very strong sense of who they are, and a sense of kind of what they look like and how they act. And then I guess for things like the rooms, the very original Eagle Rider book that I wrote as a teenager didn't have rooms in it at all. And it was only when I kind of was expanding it into, I guess, a series and trying to publish that I ended up sort of pinning down the magic a little bit more. And specifically for the runes, I use something called the Gallic tree alphabet, which is basically just in the Gallic language, they use the name of a tree for each letter of the alphabet. And I was like, that's cool. I'm going to use that. And so that was where all the names of the runes came from. And then I did a bit of research into some of the folklore around trees to kind of inspire what each of the runes does as a magic power. And you can read more about the specifics of all that on my website. I have now put up a page about runes and some of the folklore that has inspired them. And so that's kind of for that aspect, I guess. That's how I came up with the idea.
Yeah, nice. And then when you've got those ideas and that you actually have to write, what is it? I mean, there's a lot of books. I mean, we don't have many words exactly in the Latin or in the third one, but there's a lot of words.
Yeah.
You work as an archaeologist, so this isn't your full-time job. So how what does it actually look like to create 3 full-length novels? Is it are you just doing it like, is it really easy? Is it fun all the time? Is it challenging? And I guess what's that? If someone is here thinking, I'm going to write a novel, I think a lot of people got that. It's one of their kind of like bucket list items of love to write a novel. And what would your advice be?
Well, I think these days, I would say my main piece of advice I give to authors is like, you don't actually need to know how to write, or you don't really need to have any sort of technical storytelling understanding. What you do need is like determination and a sort of drive to get it done, because that's the main difference between people who write and people who finish books. It's just determination. And so most of the time it's fun, or else I wouldn't do it. But yeah, as you say, it's on paper. When I say yes, I'm an archaeologist and an author, I'm like, oh wow, that's so cool. And I'm like, yeah, but it's just really hard work a lot of the time. Because yeah, it's like doing a 9-to-5 job, and sometimes my 9-to-5 job is like hard physical labor. And you get home and you're just exhausted, and the last thing I want to do is open my computer and try and write. But you have to be very dedicated to it. This is my writing time, and almost like plan out the week ahead and say, between 7:30 and 8:30 on Monday night, I will write. And if I write one word, it's better than no words. And so a lot of it is, I guess, sheer determination. But you have to have a bit of a joy to do it as well. Otherwise, why put yourself through that? But I know, like, I think it was maybe for Eagles 4, I can't remember. One of my books, I ended up basically setting my alarm clock an hour earlier for about 2 months, and just getting up at like, I don't know, 6 in the morning and doing an hour's writing before going to work, because I just needed to get the words done. And once you have something on the page, it does get easier. I find like the blank page is often the hardest part. When once you have words on the page to work with and edit, it does get a little bit easier.
Yeah. There's parts of all 3 books. I think this one, maybe just several bit most recently, but I think of several books where very pacey and things are happening, and there's multiple storylines going on at once, which are very involved, and new characters or creatures are popping up. Do you find when you're writing and when it's flowing that you're just kind of lost in that world, and time just passes, or is it always quite attached to them?
Yeah, I think if I get into a scene and I know what's happening and where it's going, like I will just get lost in it and just write for hours and hours. I usually find I get stuck when I haven't thought through like what I'm trying to achieve, like what is the goal of the scene, or what are the characters trying to achieve, or that's usually when I get stuck and just write a few words and then delete them and try again, and eventually close my laptop and come back to it the next day or something. But what if I know where a scene is going or what point I'm trying to get to, I can just get completely lost in it and go for hours and write a good few thousand words in one sitting. But yeah, so sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
Nice. And you mentioned that you lost determination, which
Yeah.
implies that sometimes it isn't very easy to keep going at all.
Yeah.
And getting up to 6 a.m. must be for yourself as well, just on dark nights and things. So what gives you that determination? Like, where does the passion come from to
Yeah,
write when it's not actually the way you build it? It's a passion. Where does it come from?
yeah. I mean, yeah, and sometimes it can be very hard being an author when you're just, because it's such a long project and you're often just working on it by yourself for a very long time and you get stuck in your own head and you don't get like any feedback from people being like, oh yeah, this is good to keep going. You have to trust that you have to keep going. But I mean, I guess like for me, a lot of it comes down to, I mean, we're in a church tonight, so you may or may not know that I'm a Christian. But a lot of it for me is like, I think God has given me a gift of being creative. And I love that I can use that gift. I use it, I mean, for me, writing stories, even though it's like made up worlds, I kind of use it as a way to explore real things, if you know what I mean. So like when people are going through hard times, you like, well, I put people through a lot of hard times in my book. And it helps me kind of see how people can go through situations, and also helps me to kind of think through things that I think about God, because I kind of translate them into a story form almost. And then also for the actual like practical bit of writing, I do pray a lot about my writing and kind of just pray that God would write with me and give me things to say as well, and inspire things. And I think sometimes there's just things that come out of my books that I haven't even maybe consciously planned to go in there, and then people like my mom will be like, oh, did you know this bit was like such and such, and then I'm like, oh really, I didn't even know I'd done that. So yeah, so even though like the books themselves, they're just kind of like fantasy adventure stories, they're not necessarily like Christian or have God in them, but they kind of do have God in it as well, I think, because it's some of how I understand God. And yeah, does that kind of explain?
Yeah. Seeing some of the acknowledgements that your books that you sort of draw inspiration, or your biography, you draw inspiration from lots of things, from your archaeology, from the outdoor world that you like to spend time in, and from the Bible.
Yeah.
I actually was reading Bible literally this morning, and I need to just look at a chapter of Job 28. This was totally random. I thought this is and I wondered, is there any possibility that this was one of the inspirations from the previous book, or because it specifically says it's talking about like the world. This is no bird of prey knows that you didn't have.
Ooh,
Did you?
that's a good. I don't think I've matched that one.
No.
And I think for the very first book, there's definitely a verse that's like, those who trust in the Lord will ride on wings like eagles. And that was one of the main. I was like, oh, wouldn't that be cool? We actually did ride on wings like eagles. So I was like, oh, right, think about that.
4 books later?
Yeah, 4 books later, I'm still, 3 books later.
Well, I was projecting 4.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. But yeah, but there's lots of eagles in the Bible. There's lots of mentions of paths. And I guess Eagles War, maybe it didn't specifically have a specific Bible verse that inspired it, but there was one Bible verse that I keep coming back to, which is in the acknowledgements. So I'll just read it. And it's more, I almost think Eagles War has been more like me learning how to trust in God to actually get a book written rather than, and I guess part of the themes that come through Eagles War a lot is that the characters have to learn to trust in powers bigger than themselves. But this one was, now all glory to God who is able through his mighty power at work within us to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think. And it's one of those, this book has taken so long to write, and it's been really, really hard sometimes. And I honestly didn't think I'd ever get to the end of it. And I think part of me can only really say it's because I prayed a lot and just took it day at a time. And I'm just like, okay, God, just help me write this one chapter, this one paragraph. And it's all come together. And yeah, as I say, it feels to me like it's more than I could have asked or imagined. And it's finally here, and it's a real book I can hold in my hand.
That must be a brilliant feeling.
Yeah.
Nice. So last question, and then we'll take all these questions.
Great.
If we, as your readership and
Yeah.
people beyond this room and watching as well, and maybe later watching some of it on the internet, what's the, as an independent author, what is the best way to support you? Obviously buying a book, but maybe a bit more than that. How do we best support you?
Yes, well, obviously, buying a book is very supportive. And I would still say, for indie authors, if you can, buy direct from the author or their indie publisher, because then they actually get some money from the sale, rather than if you buy from big retailers, I get a very, very small percentage of the money that you pay. But obviously, there's many other ways that you can support an indie author, and many of them are free and very easy for you to do. Like, leave a rating or a review is like super, super helpful. And just tell people about it. And so you can sign up to my newsletter, which one of the slides has got QR code. Not that one. But yeah, sign up to my newsletter, and I mean, if you do sign up to my newsletter, you'll also get like free short stories and stuff that I put out. And yeah, I also have a little merch store, which you can get t-shirts like the one that matches. And since some other people in the room are also sporting merch for my shop, and like my mom and dad. And there's
Actually, very helpful.
Oh, Jeff's got his Eagles pack t-shirt on. And there's like some mugs and some notebooks. And even if you don't want a specific Eagle Rider themed one, there's many other book themed one stuff or outdoorsy themed. And there's even a custom one. You can just upload your own design. And that just all helps to kind of fund stuff like getting books printed and things like that. But yeah, one of the big easy ones you can do is leave a rating or review on like something like Goodreads, or if you can get through the Amazon box that kind of filter reviews and try and put one on Amazon. Or even on my website. If you write a good review, I might even feature you on my website.
Nice.
So yeah, I think that's. But also, just coming tonight is a huge support to me as well. So thank you very much all for coming.
Nice. Well, I'll just open it up to questions from the floor, and if anyone on the online thing wants to put the chat message on. Does anyone have a question? Did you have a question?
We do have a rolling mic somewhere, which is coming, just so that people can all hear you.
Why is the symbol for that like an upside down version of the symbol you use to mark the smoothest sides of a bit of wood?
Wow. I feel like this is almost a collection for my brother Ian, because I think he designed that one. He's shaking his head. I feel like some people will not be familiar with the symbol for Ur, but it's basically like, it's way too small to even like show you guys. It's like and then I don't know, it's a bit like a Y with a little squiggle at the bottom. Well, when we were designing the shapes of the rooms, the sort of decision was to try and make it like most of the time in the book, people are drawing them in the air, like kind of what I just attempted to do there. So they're supposed to be nice flowing shapes that you can just, if you're just out, you just kind of do it. So there was not supposed to be like jagged edges and stuff, because they're not really being carved into anything. It's more like nice flowing motions. And a lot of them are kind of inspired a bit by trees as well. So some of them are maybe a little bit like the leaves of the tree that they match. But I don't think it was specifically like the upside down version of what he said. I don't think we thought about that. Yeah, good question.
Coincidence.
Yeah, coincidence, probably. No, next question.
Do you write chronologically, or do you have like a fun bit you want to write and then write the rest to get up to it?
Yeah, that's another really great question. I'm very much a chronological. I have to go in order, and I cannot write the ending before I've written everything that comes up to the ending. But I guess the interesting thing about that is the start of my books get rewritten way more often than the end. So actually, I think there's about 5 chapters at the end of Eagle's War that are almost first drafts essentially, and they're in the final publication. Because by that point I knew what was happening. I didn't need to go back and keep editing. Whereas the first, like at least the first half of Eagle's War, it's been through many edits and many changes. And I mean, Jeff can attest to having read a much earlier draft and then reading the final version. Some of the stuff you were like, I remember that bit, but it's in a different place than it was before. But yeah, I don't know how people can just write a bit and then go back and to fill in a gap, and no, that's not gonna go in order.
It's a really good question here. When you write, what do you feel about your characters? Do you feel like part of them all?
Say that last bit again.
Do you feel like part of them at all?
Or do I feel like part of my characters? Yeah, I think definitely the main characters. Like none of them are exactly me, but a lot of them have a lot of me in them, I would say. And I think most of the characters I write, like I really get into their head, and I like writing them. And I think it's almost like it's like a chance to explore different things of in the reality I would not do some of the things that Aiden does. But it's quite fun to just be a bit reckless and climb on roof and jump on back an eagle, and or just like run into a battle, or and I'm like, oh, that's something I would never do in reality. But so yeah, I definitely think certainly probably Aiden and Branwyn are maybe the most similar to me. Maybe. I don't know. They're maybe the two that I relate to the most. But all of them I have very soft spots for them, and I'm really not good at killing off characters. So, but maybe you like that. So there's not really too much of a threat of beloved characters dying in my books. But that's not to say that nobody dies.
It's
Yes, it is a war. But yeah, I guess I hope that sort of answered the question.
Right.
This question just behind Halloween, yeah.
Kind of springboarding off of that question, where do you like? I know some authors get inspiration for their characters from people that they know in their lives. Other times they get inspiration from characters from other books. Is there any kind of overlap there with like people you know in your everyday life that get into the characters of your books, or are they more inspired by other works that you've read?
Yeah, I think I specifically try hard not to base characters on real people ever, because then I'd have to speak to that real person and be like, I basically so I try not to base them on real people, but I think there are some little things that maybe sneak in that my parents are like, oh, that's just like so and so. But it's not really intentional. And yeah, I think so. I'm probably more inspired. Like some of the characters are probably more inspired by like the archetype of like a character from like a fantasy novel. So I think like the character of Valkyr, who is one of the wizards in the book, and he's a bit of like, well, you're never quite sure what his agenda is. I think
He's my favorite character.
and he's just very character. Yeah, he's very enigmatic. But I feel like that sort of enigmatic wizard, you don't know whose side they're on and what game they're really playing, is a bit of a character that crops up in other types of fantasy books. So sometimes they are based a bit on an archetype. But yeah, I never specifically based them on real people. So I'll be glad about that. Question from the front. Oh no, this not.
So, Lindsay, I'm interested in what you were saying about how you imagine things not visually.
Yeah.
And right from the very start of book one, my comment was always the descriptions were just so vivid. it always made me think you must be imagining, you must be seeing something. So my sort of question is now going to turn to the artwork, okay, in the book. You can talk a little bit about that, but does the artwork that Ian has created for your book match what you thought you were imagining or visualizing?
Yeah,
Because it's
yeah. Well, as I say, I don't really have like strong, vivid pictures in my own mind of what any of the scenes or characters or places look like, which I do think then makes me have to, when I'm actually writing, I have to think much more carefully about the descriptions, which is my theory as to why I seem to write descriptively, because people keep saying that to me. It's like, I'm not very good at picturing it, but somehow I write it in a way that people can picture it. And actually, I do think a lot of the illustrations they're very similar to what I imagine, but I guess it's almost like they're more similar to what I imagine in the sense of the illustrator, the feel of what's going on, rather than specifically what it looks like. And I guess, for those who don't know, Ian, who does all the artwork, is my brother. So I guess we're maybe got a bit of a sibling in syncness there. um, yeah, so, and I have been known, sometimes Ian will do an illustration and I'll be, oh, that's a great detail. And I'll go back and actually add it in afterwards. Although that didn't really happen so much for this one because most of the illustrations we've done after the book was pretty much finished. But yeah, so it's, as I said, it's definitely the sense of the feel that you get from the illustrations is usually pretty spot on to what I'm imagining. But then also things like Ian will add all the detail of like the costume that they're wearing, or maybe the specifics of a building, or what a forest looks like. And that sort of thing has just never really been in my mind to begin with, to know if it's the same or not. But as long as it fits the vibe of what I'm thinking, it's great. Yeah.
The temple one more.
Just at the very back.
This is sorry. This is I know this is really like evil extended universe, like particle times universe. I'm just gonna getting awareness of this. But is this book 3? Is that right?
Yes, this is book 3 of 4.
That is a lot of work. What sustains? What gives you the stamina to keep going with something that is a long project?
Yeah. I mean, well, this particular project, I mean, this book took me, well, I think it must be about 5 years to get Eagle's War written. I think Eagle's Path took about 3 years. I mean, Eagle's Guard, kind of who knows, because it evolved out of writing from a long, long time. But I think, I mean, these days, it's because all of you guys read the books and you want to know what happens next and how it finishes. So a lot of it is like, I want to tell you guys the end of the story, but I also want to tell myself the end of the story. And I think part of it is just me. I like to finish what I start. And I think as well, like, I mean, it can get very demoralizing sometimes when I'm just too long in my own head. But it's just reminding myself, like, the joy I get from telling stories. And actually, these are the sort of books that me as a teenager would have wanted to read, and I want to write books that other teenagers who are like me would want to read. And yeah, so a lot of it is just like personal determination, but also just because there's so many people who've read the first parts now, I don't want to let anyone down and not finish it and see it through as well. So, yeah.
Great. Well,
Well,
I think we're going to hear a bit more of the story.
yeah. I think I'm gonna have a drink of water before I do that.
And then from a bit nearer the beginning of the story. It's the bit that I'm thinking of correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last chance to enter the competition link because it's week past, so don't feel self-conscious if you wanna be in.
Yeah, I won't mind if you take your phone out to scan the QR code on the way.
I just have it hanging ready here, and so that pops up at the scan button. Great. I'll link you
Yeah,
to the stage.
so that one. Oh, there's the QR code. Okay, so this second reading is from the perspective of Erin, who is one of the other main characters of the book. And she is in this book kind of trying to, I guess, get the country ready for war and build an army and try and recruit people. And she's just like a very new queen, and she's young and kind of nobody trusts her or thinks she can do it. So she faces a lot of opposition, and she goes to a lot of villages and tries to recruit people. And this is one of the villages she goes to, and she finds some of the Brathader, who are like the bad guys essentially, have taken them hostages, and she's trying to recruit people. And yeah, this is what happens. Okay. There was no more time for thinking. Erin had to act now. She unbuckled the sword from around her waist and handed the weapon to Marsley, who stared at her as if trying to read her thoughts. What are you doing? Rab hissed. I'm going to talk to them. Then why are you removing your sword? Because I doubt they'll speak to me if I'm armed. Too dangerous, said Marsley and Rab in unison. They glanced at each other. I won't really be in danger, said Erin, as long as Falker is as good a wizard as he claims. Falker gave a quiet laugh. His cunning gaze met hers. Without asking anything about her plan, he drew a quick series of runes. Erin tried not to squirm as the magic tingled over her skin in waves. Your shield better hold, said Erin. It'll hold, Falker assured her. Marsley, we can't let her do this, said Rab, grabbing Marsley's arm. Marsley frowned, her eyes flicking from Rab's hand to his face. She tugged herself free. She's the queen. It's our job to protect her, not make her decisions. At least tell me you have a plan, Rab whispered. I'm working on it, said Erin. Before anyone, including herself, could talk her out of it, Erin strode out from behind the wagon and towards the deserters. At her appearance, all six pressed their weapons more closely to the skin of their hostages. One of the men had a dripping slash across his collarbone. Isabel stared at Erin, her expression stricken. Erin raised her hands. I'm unarmed. The lead deserter turned to point his sword towards Erin, keeping his other arm hooked around the neck of the woman he held captive. Let us go free, and no one needs to get hurt, the lead deserter called. This is your last chance to let these people go, or you will get hurt, said Erin. The deserters scoffed. If we let them go, you'll only kill us. If I wanted you dead, it would only take a signal to my wizard or the Eagle Riders. Erin kept moving slowly and steadily towards the deserter. But Isabel here has pleaded your case. She tells me you are no longer in league with the Brathader, that you are not my enemy. If we're not your enemy, why should we surrender to you? Another of the deserters called. You fought against your rightful queen at Carnges, said Erin. You must know there will be consequences. We fought only to protect our families in Tehran City, said one. If you wanted to protect your families, you should never have joined the Sorcier, said Erin. You think we had a choice? I think you made a choice, Erin replied, trying not to let their words get under her skin. It's not us you should be worried about, said the lead deserter. All we care about is surviving to get back to our families. But there's a proper war band out there, roaming the south. They're the ones you should be fighting and imprisoning. Erin swallowed, trying not to let her fear show. She'd hoped these few men would be the worst of her problems, but a war band could easily threaten her small company, or even cause trouble for the fortress at Carnges. This is your last chance to surrender peacefully, said Erin. No, said the lead deserter. The others shuffled nervously, but no one contradicted him. Erin sighed. They were desperate men trying to save their families. They weren't going to listen. They would risk their lives before letting her take them captive. Could she let them go? Part of her respected them, wanted to show them mercy. The larger part screamed fear into her mind. These deserters had been Brathader, and it was Brathader who had betrayed her father. She couldn't trust them. She couldn't make the same mistakes he had. Erin took a deep breath. It was time to test Falker's shield. All right, said Erin. I'll let you leave this village if you release your hostages. No, the deserter repeated. These hostages are coming with us until we're safely away from this place. I can't allow that, said Erin, but I'll do a trade. Take me in their place, and I'll walk you out of the village myself. At her words, Erin heard a gasp from the crowd of onlookers. This is a trick. Why, do you think I have the strength to overpower you? The deserters weighed up their options. At last, the lead deserter gave a nod and beckoned Erin closer. When she was within arm's reach, he thrust away the other woman he had been holding and grabbed Erin, pulling her to his chest and wrapping an arm around her neck. Although Erin had been expecting it, she sucked in a breath, trying not to flinch. The movement brought back a rush of memories of being held by Dageny at Cairnban, of that rune biting into her neck, of the eagle riders giving in for her sake. She breathed out slowly. This time would be different. She had to believe that. The deserter spoke into her ear, his voice vibrating through her armor. Now, my queen, walk us to the edge of town. Let the others go free. Erin felt the deserter nod, then watched with relief as the other hostages ran free. The child went straight to Isabel and buried her face in the woman's skirts. With a grunt, the deserter walked backwards, dragging Erin along with him. The other deserters crowded in close, as if she were the only shield between them and the crowd. They barely made it to the end of the street before Falker stepped out, blocking the way. You can let go of the queen now. The deserter swiveled so quickly, his arm clacked Erin's chin, and she bit her tongue. We're not letting her go until we're safely out of here, the deserter called back. Let us go free, and no harm will come to her. I'm afraid I can't do that, said Falker. He started forming a rune in his hand. Erin recognized Pace, the thunderbolt. Her breath caught. Was Falker going to throw that at her? Did he trust his own shield that much? Before she could find out, a shadow fell over them as Arthur and Cale swooped down. The deserter jumped in fright, and Erin took the moment of confusion to slip from his grasp. He flailed after her, but she dodged and dropped into a fighting stance. When he lunged again, she sidestepped and pushed him onwards, letting his own momentum carry him to the ground. Another deserter grabbed her from behind. Erin struggled in his grasp, then kicked her feet into the air, sending them both crashing backwards to the ground. Erin rolled to the side, leaving the man winded next to his comrade. She whirled to her feet in time to see a third deserter swinging a sword at her. Her quick recovery brought her straight into the path of the blow, surprising both her and the wielder of the sword, who had likely only meant to threaten her. The deserter's eyes widened in shock, but he couldn't halt the momentum of the sword. The blade sliced towards Erin's chest. She twisted away from it, but it wasn't enough. A finger's breadth from her body, the sword slammed into the solid wall of her shield and rebounded in a flash of red sparks. The force of it sent the deserter stumbling back. Erin took her chance and charged the deserter before he could find his balance. She kicked his ankles out from underneath him. He fell to the ground with a thud, and she slammed her foot onto his wrist, making him drop the sword. She crouched to pick up the weapon, then pressed it into his back. Your surrender is accepted, she whispered. Then she looked up at the rest of the deserters. Anyone else want to take their chances? Or maybe you'd rather run? I'd like to see you outrun an eagle rider.